Today, we're going to be talking about non-traditional revenue, and we're joined with Tammy Ruffle and Kelly Schmiel in our connectional relations team. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. Go ahead and kick things up.
Thanks, Jensen. Well, thank you all for taking the time to join us today for the non-traditional revenue webinar. As Jensen said, I'm Kelly Schmiel. I'm the relationship director here at GCFA and oversee our connectional relations department. Our support brand, UMC Support's mission is to help sustain ministries through the services, the resources, and the partnerships that we offer to the connection. We know that ministries are dealing with less people and resources, and wanted to highlight one of the many resources that we have on our website for ways that churches, ministries can think outside of the box to bring in additional resources and expand your ministry and your communities. As Jensen said, we will be sending out this slide deck from today and along with a link to the toolkit, which will be much more detailed and have examples of some of the things that we're going to highlight today. I also wanted to encourage you all to share any ideas and tips that you are doing in your ministry that the group could benefit from. Okay, so for today's purposes, when we refer to non-traditional revenue, is anything other than what you might receive from the offering plate. Capital campaign contributions, pledges, or any gifts from church members. Non-traditional revenue is just that, thinking outside of the box of ways to bring in additional resources for your ministries. Before we get too far along, the first thing we would suggest is defining what it is you're trying to accomplish. This will help focus the purpose of the event or idea that you're wanting to implement. It's also important to be able to communicate to your audience what the need is for your ministry and the impact that this idea or event could have. People like to know what it is they're supporting. So, think for yourself the things in your own life that you support, medical research, children's causes, social causes. Again, by defining what it is that you're raising money or awareness for, you can let that shape the focus surrounding your event. Some examples I've seen in my own church are things like pancake breakfast to benefit mission trips, youth ministries, and retreats. We also talk with a lot of smaller churches that just need help in basic maintenance of their buildings. Or maybe it's a free event that's goal is to increase outreach in your community. Being able, to define what your event is and the impact it will have is where we suggest you start. So now that you've decided on what you're raising money for, some questions to consider when developing a fundraising event. What is your goal for the event? Again, this is why it's important to define what you're raising money for, in addition to the outreach your event will have to highlight your ministry and your goals. What is your budget? Are you able to have items donated to help offset any cost so that more of those resources will be able to benefit your ministry? How will you draw attendees to your event? Does your event have a theme? Logistics of where your event will take place. So again, just kind of basic questions as you're preparing for implementing something new for your church. And here are just some ideas of possible events. If you all are doing anything else, please include that in the chat. I'm sure you all have ideas that another ministry could benefit from. But just a list of 5K runs, ticketed dinners, maybe a seasonal fundraiser, a garage sale, and sell donuts and coffee during the event. Okay, so now that we've gone over some things to consider before putting together an event, another thing to ask is, does it make sense to have sponsorship for your event? Companies and organizations like these opportunities to be able to get in front of your audience, to be able to highlight their organizations. These businesses are in your communities as well. Sponsorships can be financial, or even if it's just in kind, to help you all offset some of your cost for an event And it really is another way to be able to bring in additional resources and partnerships for your ministry. So if you are thinking about having sponsors, some things to think about is your space. How many sponsors could your space hold? We recommend these locations being in high traffic areas so that these sponsors can have, a captive audience to be able to engage with the people attending your events. We as a department go to a lot of events throughout the connection, and having like the right space with the right traffic makes it beneficial to us, and makes us want to come back to those events. So that's kind of a main thing we would really stress for you all to think about. Some ideas where this might make sense is maybe like a back to school bash for your church or community. Invite pediatricians, offices, children and parent related companies and organizations. Maybe it's a restaurant in town that has a kids eat free night, that they want to promote. Just think through what your event is and the audience that you are trying to attract. So if you are considering incorporating sponsorship or opportunities into your event with maybe a vendor hall, other opportunities to consider, maybe a meal or a snack sponsor. Usually with this type of sponsorship, companies are looking for additional exposure to your audience. Kind of the higher dollar, the more exposure that they would like to have and that they would be willing to pay for. That could be signage around your event, maybe an opportunity to address the attendees at your event. Another option that we see a lot when we go to events is having an event bag, like a welcome bag with handouts that these sponsors can put their information in, giveaway items, coupons from those businesses. Again, companies are looking for ways to engage, your audience and ways to be involved in the communities as well that they live in. So we do have in the toolkit, it's an 18-page document. And so there are a lot of examples over these different sponsor packages examples. Again, this is just really to kind of highlight the resource that we have on the website, just so you all know about this. But it gives you kind of a lot more detail if you are kind of looking to look into maybe incorporating some of these ideas into your events. But the first thing you do want to do is determine the pricing for your packages. This will be determined by the number of attendees that you're expecting. You'll also want to include a range of deliverables. So if it's a sponsor booth, or if it's signage, or if it's an item in a giveaway bag, or a chance to address your attendees, you just want to be able to include all of what the options are. So potential sponsors can see and be able to determine how they want to be best involved. You'll also want to include who your audience is. This helps the sponsor determine if it makes sense for them to attend it. Like I said earlier, I think we went to about 17 events last year. And that's something that we always look at, is this, we always try to get in front of leadership groups, church pastors, church admins. So having that detail is always helpful for us to determine, if we are going to go to an event or not. So just a few things to consider before, asking a potential sponsor to support your event. You want to know who they are and what they represent. Even with our partnerships, do our partnerships align with, the mission of our denomination? So you just want to make sure those interests align with your ministry and, again, the goals of your event. Understand too what it is you're asking them for. This is why you want to know exactly what you're raising money for awareness for, so you can talk about what that is that you're trying to accomplish with this event. By having a specific goal, it makes the ask not seem as personal, but more mission focused. And it also helps if you're told no. I used to be in higher ed fundraising, and people would always say to me, I would hate to have that job, asking people for money, but I didn't look at it that way. It was more mission focused, and you could talk about the ways that it was supporting a student, or what the mission of the organization was. So just, and the thing is too, people don't say yes unless you ask them. So you always have to ask to get things. So I always like to include that. But that being said, the earlier that you can get these specifics out surrounding your event and get this on the business's radar, the more successful your event will be. But businesses, kind of just like us, they have to budget for these things, and where they get their resources. So the sooner the better with any kind of ask that you are planning to make. Like I mentioned before, the toolkit that we're going to send out, there'll be a lot of examples of what, sponsorship packages and agreement specifics. But the main thing that you really want to make sure, any kind of agreement, sponsorship agreement that you're going to send out, that it details the specifics of the event, what the sponsors will be getting from the event, if it's a booth, if it's time to address the audience, any signage. You just want to make sure that that's all listed in the agreement, and that could even be an email. You just want to make sure there's some kind of documentation along with the payment details. You want to make sure you're protected, and the sponsor will want to have a clear understanding too of what their responsibilities are, and what the money is going towards. So it goes without saying, but you do want to make sure that you are promoting your event and having a clear plan of how you plan to market it, with a timeline and responsibilities. This is where giving yourself enough time to organize your event, having a clear strategy, establishing a committee so you can share those responsibilities, and then consider any long-term goals of your event. Are we going to try to make this an annual event, maybe a quarterly event? Like, just kind of having all that discussed, as you start planning this. With any first-time event too, you all know, you learn from what worked and what didn't, and how you'd like to tweak it, down the road. And it goes without saying, but have fun when you're planning these events. So just a couple of additional things that you do want to consider when you're thinking about how you're going to market your event. Think about writing a press release, again, to kind of tell the story of what it is you're trying to accomplish, and submit that to local media. Make sure to have your sponsors tell your story and submit that as well. Have them share that on their social media pages. You really kind of want to blanket all of your resources and make sure you're getting the messaging out. Post an ad in your local newspaper, definitely in your church's newsletter and bulletin. You want to make sure you have it on your website, your social media. If you're going to distribute any flyers in your community, again, just to kind of get the word out about your event.
Yeah. So, kind of looking through a couple of questions here, it seems like one asset that churches have is location and infrastructure, right? So making sure to make the most of those, maybe a church's proximity to schools. A lot of churches are near schools. Maybe there's a school event that you can kind of piggyback and work into and be a part of. And also a lot of churches on main streets in towns that might have festivals.
Right.
I think from parking to, just thinking about, I have 2 kids, and if we go to a festival, if there's a church that says they have bathrooms open to the public, like that might be the reason that all of a sudden now I'm in this new space seeing vendors. So you want to speak at all about kind of like looking into partnering into another event? And still, a lot of these seem to apply still for your portion.
Well, yeah. And kind of to piggyback on what you were saying, churches have an advantage with, a lot of times they have parking, and they're in, or they have land. So if there's a fall festival that's maybe going on in your town already, or a carnival, partnering with the group that puts that on, and being able to kind of share the responsibilities as well. There's always I feel like there's always a lot of book drives too. Churches have big open spaces, usually like a fellowship hall that would be able to accommodate that. Um, even like a job fair, like churches putting on a job fair. A lot of times those are held at like hotels. So being able for whoever puts those job fairs on to be able to kind of cut out that big hotel expense, because it would be again like outreach that the church can do for the community. So again, I mean, it's kind of like what the church, their kind of how they see their mission playing out in their communities and being able to kind of tailor that to some of the events that might already be going on in the community.
Yeah. So I know you talked a little bit about it, but in a lot of these cases, we're talking about you need some documentation, right? Some formal agreements just to keep everything consistent throughout and make sure
Mhm.
we manage expectations of what's being offered, what's not being offered. Is there power in the booth space? And, in some churches, I'm from the North Central jurisdiction, so a lot of smaller aging churches that maybe things like, is there enough power to offer all of the booth spaces power? um and maybe there's premium spots that could be in a package,
Mhm.
the premium spot that offers power. So can you talk a little bit about that, kind of like the importance of that, documenting the different and why you have those formal agreements?
Yes. So again, it's mostly to document what it is. It's like a contract, what it is that you are going to be like the money is going toward. So if you're giving, let's say it's $500, so you get a booth space for that. You get an opportunity to have something in a welcome bag. You can distribute flyers. You can sell things at your booth. Usually it's always stated to like how big the booth is and the standard size. It's usually like a 6-foot table. For us, that's important when we go to events. So we know like the materials that we need to take out that will fit those specifications. It's also, it's good for the company to be able to see, for their records. And this is what we're getting for this. Again, they go to a lot of events as well. So being able to determine, yeah, we would have good exposure. Here's what we're getting at this event, and here's the impact, this can have on our cause.
So we had a question about what is text to tithe.
So text to tithe, it's like a text to give campaign. So a lot of like online giving companies, and I think that's a slide coming up. So we have different partnerships with different companies as well, that offer waived setup fees or discounts to our Methodist ministries. But a lot of times with online giving, that's an option where, you can have a text to give if it's a push for, you all are trying to raise money for a mission trip. Um, it's a like, we're trying to reach a goal of $5,000 or whatever the goal is. And so there's a way like you can message through an app to your audience to encourage them to text to give. Or if you've ever, I mean, I see that at sporting events too. If you're ever at a sporting event and they'll have a number if you want to support like whatever the local charity is. So that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we have a webinar coming up specifically on electronic giving. So definitely stay tuned for that. And kind of going through some partnerships we have and what those offerings look like. And just in today's digital age, I mean, every donation to the church is so imperative and important. And um, I know many people still use the envelope system, right? That the churches, you get your tithing envelopes, but in today's digital age, you want to make sure you lower that barrier across the board so that anyone that wants to give, it's just easiest for them where they're at. And so a
Mhm.
lot of churches are, in addition to traditional methods, starting to add some of these electronic giving options. So let's see. We have a question about regarding the church insurance and liability with vendors on church property. So yes, that is definitely a consideration when you're talking about things like this. And the United Methodist Insurance Program, we just did a webinar, I think it was last month, with the United Methodist Insurance Program, and it was talking about some best practices when doing events. And it's really any type of event, including shared space. So if the church is being utilized by an AA group or anything like that, you really need to have those safeguards in place. So that separate webinar, I will we'll get that link included in the follow-up email we sent out, because I think that's important. Make sure people are aware of. See, many of us need ongoing revenue opportunities. Do you have any examples of successful non-giving revenue opportunities? So non-donation based revenue opportunities. Do you all have anything?
So, hold on, let me go. So this will be included. I'm gonna go to the slide. You all will get this in the follow-up. But along with these two resources, and like Jensen was saying, he'll include the one about the insurance. But we have more ministry partners than this, but this is these three Vanco ministry brands, Tidely, are online giving, live streaming partners. We also have a partner called Park Thrive. So if you all have a parking lot that is being underutilized, Park Thrive is an option where if you all are in a high traffic area, if you're in an area that maybe is by a college and on the weekends, they have football games or sporting events, but being able to bring in additional revenue from your parking lot, Park Thrive can do that. There isn't a contract. So if you just want to try it out and see how that goes, that would be a way for ongoing donations into your church. Trying to think, Tammy, can you think of any others? Or is there any, the people on the call, like, is there anything that you all are doing that you would want to share with the group?
So we had a question about, while we wait to see if anybody raise your hand. If you use the raise your hand function, we'll be able to call on you for that. But we had a question about real life sponsorship examples. And I think we're talking about event sponsorships, right? So there's an event or there's something happening where a sponsorship then becomes available. And so this would be someone that contributes in a significant way in exchange for their branding being attached to the event, right? So yeah.
So there's a church here in Nashville that I was passing the other day, and they're on a pretty busy road. And I don't know what the event was that they had, but I could tell one of their deliverables from their sponsors was they had signs out in front of their church thanking their sponsors. One of the sponsors was Thrivent. And so, I'm sure in the agreement, it states, we will put out your sign, with your branding for, whatever the time period is. But, again, on a busy road, but being able to recognize a sponsor like that. So, and depending on, what that sponsorship looked like, I don't know if they have that up longer than after the event or what the details are that maybe they worked out with that sponsor.
Jim raised his hand, so I've allowed his microphone. So Jim, what do you have for us?
Yes, Jim Ariel here. We created a revenue stream at our church by creating 2 homeless apartments in an unused education building. We took a 0% loan from the city. We took a loan from a bank. We partnered with a nonprofit organization here called Homeward Bound to provide counseling, provide screening, to provide the residents to us. We didn't want someone just picked up off the street to go in the apartments. And I guess we've had success for that now for, I think about 7 years, and that's worked out. And then we're also that same 2-story educational building, other areas of the building that aren't used. We've been renting that space out to organizations to create a revenue stream.
That's great.
Thank you so much. Very good. Taking a look in the chat here. And comment about a church having bunk rooms for up to 14 people to visit. How can we market that to other churches, colleges, and nonprofits? So I would definitely suggest that before you focus on marketing, that you make sure you check with your insurance carrier, because that kind of changes the usage of the property. So we want to make sure that you have all of the legal and insurance considerations worked out um, before advertising that. And it also depends, I think, the usage on how you're advertising that. If it's advertising it for like mission groups versus if it's just like a secular advertisement for space. So I would strongly suggest you start by talking with your insurance carrier and kind of seeing how that goes. We have, and Nancy has something to share with us, so I have requested it. There you go. What do you have for us, Nancy?
Our church has a cards, collectibles, and craft show. We just started it to do quarterly. We've had our second one. We rent out tables to people who want to sell Pokemon cards and all that kind of stuff that is exciting people these days. And we have had 45 to 50 vendors at both of our events so far, and it seems to be growing, which is great. We might almost be at capacity, though, which could be a problem at some point. But
Not a bad problem to have.
right.
Yeah.
So we've been real happy with the way it's worked out.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we have a Jennifer that has something to share with us, maybe some ideas. We have, while we're waiting there to see if Jennifer wants to share with us, we have Chris has shared that their United Women in Faith hold an annual live auction to raise money for their missions. And I think, my dad was a local pastor, and my mom did a lot of the UMW stuff, and man, bake sales and auctions and all kinds of different opportunities are really, really prevalent in the churches there. So any suggestions specifically for a smaller church located in a rural area? I think as Nancy kind of just shared there, to me, it pops into mind as it might not be something that you would immediately think of. Nancy shared it's like trading cards and collectibles, and I would not have immediately gone to that space. So I think maybe tap into the members in the church and see what communities are they a part of within your area, because if you have somebody that's into that niche, they might be able to know right out of the gate 10 people that would be interested in something like that.
I know I grew up in a small rural church. There's a question there about located in a rural area. Every year they had a huge turkey dinner, and they sold tickets wherever they could, not just in town, but go to the bigger towns, neighboring churches, and invite. And they used to raise like $5,000 in one evening, and that all went to missions. So that's another example.
Yeah, where I'm from, there's a lot of Catholic parishes, and they all would have barbecue chicken dinners where they would sell the barbecue. A lot of times it was sold in advance and they would sell out. And same with like fish fries. So, a reason for people, and a lot of times it's cheaper than going out to eat now. So, and it brings people together for fellowship at your church as well. So
we always had, our youth group would do like hoagie like sub sales for the Super Bowl Sunday, right? And that ended up turning into an event that then people were coming to the church for because it was it just worked out and people were really interested in that. So yeah, there's some fun creative options out there. All right, we have Carla wants to share. Carla, what do you have for us here?
We have a large building and gymnasium and all, and a couple of extra buildings on campus. And someone mentioned earlier about renting out space. We have a congregation that has been a separate congregation that has been renting one of our buildings for about 9 years. It is they're a Guatemalan group, Pentecostal, don't care. They're renting some of our buildings to worship and have their services. And then recently, within the last year, we have another congregation that is the AME congregation that has trying to expand their reach out into our area, and they're using our sanctuary 2 Sunday afternoons, which is after our services, 2 afternoons, Sunday afternoons a month. So that helps our revenue, but it also is serving mission where the congregations are expanding. And then we have the United Methodist Neighborhood Center, which has their headquarters and their daycare, which uses the rest of our building during the week. And they're able to host their daycare there. And then we use our gym. We have basketball groups, we have cheerleader groups. So we try to use this building that we're blessed with to its best use all the week. Our little group, we have a very small congregation, but we have all this different mission work going on during the week. And unfortunately, the building's very old, so it's maintenance costs are eating us up. But I think the use of the church for what God intended is primary here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's never a bad thing to get the community familiar and in the habit with being okay with being on the property and in the church, right? I mean, in so many cases, it's kind of like just a barrier that once you kind of get through that. I know one church my dad served, it was on the same lot as the school. It kind of essentially shared a playground between the two buildings. And so when the school had exceeded what they could fit within the building, they ended up renting out the annex of the church. And now that came with all sorts of complications of door locks and security and all of those things you have to think of. But it was a great partnership. It benefited the church financially, and also just getting the community used to, these kids that maybe had never been in a church before were in a church on a daily basis. So it's just kind of helping with that. So let's go to, we have Shane has something for us, sir.
I think it's always important to find ministries that fit who you are. As the last person talked, I remembered, I think we forget that that historically John Wesley did not allow permanent structures in their buildings, so you could use your space for as much as you want. But also finding things that fit your mission. Where I serve in the Pacific Northwest, creation care is important to us. And so we run a recycling center, and it produces, depending on prices, anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000 a year for us.
Wow.
There are always, in every community, and how we got that is we collect tin cans and steel, and the local steel place loves to, I don't know, not all small communities, but a lot of communities have a place that collects steel. We also collect cardboard and paper to be recycled. And our community knows us for this, but it's also it's a great mission, and creation care is an important part of who we are, but it also is alternative ways to make money. And I think that's more and more what we have to do.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry if I say this wrong. I think it's Rini. So we're going to ask Rini to share here. Recycling. That's a new one for me. I haven't heard of that one either.
Hi, I pastor a small church in rural Maine. We have a thrift shop that brings in about $1,400 a month. And then we do a pie sale once a month that brings in about another $1,000 a month. And we have about 14 people in our church. And those two things have been able to keep the church open, because the church was facing being closed a couple of years ago. And that's been able to keep it going. And I just got appointed here July 1st. So we're doing some visioning and trying to come up with some plans and stuff. They have a really big mortgage here, so which is $90,000. So we're trying to come up with some ways to try and tackle that mortgage so that the church can stay open. And they're really motivated. And it's a great little church. So we're trying to really work together to come up with some solutions. But without this thrift shop, the church probably wouldn't be here. So we're really trying to focus, and I'm so thankful for the commitment level of the church and the community, though. So lots of energy and excitement and lots of fun stuff going on, lots of visioning and planning. So, but the thrift shop and the pie sales are definitely working in this community. The phone rings off the hook for pie orders. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was like, do you ship? I don't know.
We do. We do ship, but every pie is made from scratch, the crust and everything. And it's just unbelievable how many people call to order pies. And our pie sale this month is actually a fundraiser. All the pie money this month is going to one of our church members, had a liver transplant 6 weeks ago. So all the money from this pie sale is going directly to help with their medical expenses. And it's just amazing to see the whole community pull together to support that family. So it's just been absolutely unbelievable to be serving God in this church and in this community. And it's just amazing.
Also, we're getting people in the chat want to know if the information to order a pie. So if you share that with me, I'll put it.
I will put my email in the chat.
All right. We'll get that going. Thank you for sharing that.
Nothing like a good piece of pie. I'm just
I
saying.
know.
That's right. On homemade to boot. That's the thing. We talk about all this food, but it's always better food when the church ladies were making it. Let's be real here.
That's right.
So, all right.
And I mean, even along those lines, especially you, Rainey, like in Maine, or as we're coming up on cooler temperatures, at least, is soup. Like soup sales, and having maybe a once a month soup dinner, or where people can come and pick it up. It's good thing about soup is you can freeze it, or it keeps for a little while. So, or it's a good thing to take somebody if they've had a loss in their family or somebody's sick. So. Yeah, food's always a good thing to be able to market.
I keep up here. Great. See, I don't see any more questions here. Recap that. I was hoping she can share her email here. I can put it in the chat. There it is. Okay. Well, we're gonna put this out here. We had a question. Anyone sell advertising space in their church newsletter? That's
or even on your your church website, or if you do that, yeah, some good options. It's not just your newsletter, like you could increase maybe what they would be willing to spend if it's, like a partner page on your website, and maybe on your Facebook as well. So.
And on something like that, as Kelly had mentioned earlier, when you have someone looking at a booth space, part of what you're going to want to be able to provide them is an estimated number of people that are going to come through. for the event. And that's hard to do for your first events, but as you do these more, you kind of get a feel for that. But that's also going to be true for if you look at doing any sort of advertising space on website or in newsletters, is they're going to want to know, like, what's the distribution numbers? Like, how many people is this getting in front of? So that's going to be some key information for you to make sure that you're tracking ahead of time so that when these opportunities come up, you're able to provide those. All right, we have Sandra wants to share with us. So I'm going to go ahead and hey, what do you have for us?
Hi. So, in the Pacific Northwest, Kroger has a program, I think it's called Community Partnership, where you can register your church as a nonprofit. And then everyone who designates your church as the nonprofit, the church then gets a percentage of what all those people spent shopping. It doesn't take away from any of your earning points that you get by shopping at that store, but that is an organization that does give back to the community. And so depending on how many people you can get to use your church as their nonprofit, we get about $40 a month. It's not a lot of money, but I don't know how many. It's worth looking at other organizations, retail businesses in your community that might have some sort of program like that.
Yeah, that's great. And I think Amazon has something similar called the Smile program, or is that?
No, they did away with that. So we it's on our, if you go to our website, we can send this out in the information as well, but we have a partners section on our website. It's one of the main drop downs, and it's UMC Market, but it's similar to what Amazon Smile was. It's basically almost every retailer but Amazon. So we've preloaded I think all of the churches are in there. So when you go in and register, like, you can share that with your all's members. If they go in and they designate your church, anytime they're on these online retailer shopping, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I forget what the breakdown is, but you get, I think it's like a quarterly check, but it's money you're not having to do anything for. And, your members are shopping online anyway. So it's a way for them where, a small percentage at least can come back to help you all.
So, Cecilia?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say the same thing that she said. Amazon did away with it. We used it for quite a while, but they no longer do that.
Gotcha.
So if you check out UMC Market, and once you go in and, like, you register, like, when you're on a website, like, it has the cross and flame up there. So, like, it's a company where, like, if you purchase something on there, your church would get money back on that purchase.
And it's UMC.org. Is that right? No, UMCmarket.org. Sorry.
I am, I'll put that in the chat here too. We had a question about alternative revenue sources and when that becomes kind of unrelated business income. And so I put a link in the chat. I'm also going to share that. I'll make sure that goes out in the follow-up email. It's a great webinar explaining unrelated business income tax. So, just things that you can do as a church. You want to make sure that you're not putting your tax exemption status at risk by doing those things. So our Deputy General Counsel, Letitia Mayberry Wright, and I did a webinar on that. So that's unrelated business income.
And there's a document on the website too, if we want to include it, the unrelated business tax, like, handout. But we have this with our partner Park Thrive that I was mentioning, that whenever we were talking about that partnership, when we first announced it, that was like the number one question that came up about, what if it goes, and I forget, I think it's in that document, but it has to be a pretty substantial number to go above like whatever your operating budget is. And again, like our legal counsel has said, if you reach that threshold, like, is that necessarily a bad thing? If you might have to pay a little bit of taxes on it, if you're bringing that much in. Tammy and I talked to a parking company maybe about a month ago, and they were talking about a church, I think it was in Virginia Beach, that's across from the beach, and they rent out their parking lot for people going to the beach, and they bring in, was it 400,000 a year?
400,000
a year. Mm-hmm. So again, and I don't know, I don't know what their budget is and how that plays into it, but talk about, being able to sustain a ministry with that kind of income. So
Yeah, and that's really, these webinars and that we're going to send out information on the follow-up email that include insurance implications and just needing to have agreements, third-party usage agreements for your property, and also unrelated business income tax. The important thing is we're definitely not saying don't do these things. We're just saying make sure you protect the ministry when you do these things, because again, like we said at the beginning, our buildings really are one of our greatest assets, and our locations that we have as a connection. And so just really leveraging that for your church's benefit. So, and with that, I do not see any more questions in the chat. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here, I think. But this is, if you'd like to subscribe to the Collaborator, where you can find out about these resources and upcoming webinars, there's a QR code on the screen. And Tammy, Kelly, do you have anything else to add before we wrap things up?
No, I know you're going to send out a lot of information on, to everyone who registered for this. The other thing, I know Jensen mentioned the newsletter, and it's a monthly newsletter, but there's a lot of, kind of helpful tips and videos, even like I-9 forms and things, like that we get a lot of questions on. Our marketing team and our different departments have created these resources for you all that you can, look up and have throughout the year. Same with just resources on the website, different legal resources, HR best practices, like onboarding new hires, filling out tax forms, all that stuff. If you're not familiar with our website, it's a new website. It's about a year old. And when they redid the website, being able to navigate it from a local church was really the thought process behind it. So there's a lot of great free resources out there, along with the newsletter. And then, be sure to take a look at our partner page, the UMC market that we were talking about, the different online giving. Also, we have Home Depot and Staples and Ace Hardware. So we always mention that it's places that most likely you're probably already shopping. So just make sure that you all are signed up for those discounts that these companies offer to our connection.
Kelly, I know you mentioned the HR stuff, but even keeping up to date on changing landscape of HR, like this year, there's new HR guidelines from the government around when an employee should be considered hourly versus salaried. And it's a massive change. And so we have that information out there as well. So it's just really a great resource for all these different things that it's hard to keep up with. It's hard to keep up with when it's what you do every day. And for a church that's trying to have a little bit and all of, a little bit of HR, a little bit of fundraiser, a little bit of accounting, this is really hard to do that. And these churches. So. All right. I think with that will wrap things up. This recording and these slides, as well as these links, will be sent to everybody that registered for the webinar. And we'd like to thank you so much for joining us. And thanks, Kelly and Tammy, for sharing.
Well, thank you to all you all for contributing with your ideas, because that's kind of what I was hoping it would be. You all, a lot of you all serve in local churches, and so best what has worked for you all, and just this also being a way that you all can share what you do with each other. So thank you for your time and for participating.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.